This is a 3CR podcast produced in the studios of independent community radio station 3CR in Melbourne, Australia. Go to allthews.3cr.org.au.
Hi, this is Marisa from the Doin Time show. Thanks for tuning in. We're on summer break on Mondays from 4 till 5 p.m. and we'll be back on Monday, the 22nd of January 2024. We've selected some fantastic highlights for you from across 2023. So stay tuned and enjoy the show.
Slavery is back.
Welcome to a place where private business profit from a captive labour force, yet pennies are spent on medical services to a population in which the Indigenous, the poor and the mentally ill are overrepresented. Where isolation, humiliation and degradation are facts of life. Welcome to prison.
It depends who's telling the story, I suppose. The prisoners would have one view, the people who work in the prison system would have another, and I think it's up to people to decide where the truth is.
Give government propaganda and the media spin doctors the flick, and check out Doin Time for news, views and tunes on prison issues from Guantanamo Bay to Christmas Island to prisons and detention centres everywhere. Every Monday at 4 p.m. on your community radio 3CR.
We are still fired up and we're still talking about revolution.
Hello and welcome to the Doin Time show. This is 3CR Community Radio, 855 AM on the dial, streaming live on www.3cr.org.au. This episode of Doin Time may contain audio images of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who have died and discussion of deaths in custody. First up on the show, we will speak with Jenny Webber from the Bob Brown Foundation, and we're going to be speaking with her about a very important topic, and it's in regards to what's happening at the Tarkine in regards to a forest defender, Dr Collette Harsden, who will spend the next 3 months in prison for peacefully defending Tasmania's native forests. Then we will speak with Cheryl Axleby from Change the Record. She is a First Nations activist, and we'll be speaking with her about Raise the Age, national campaign to raise the age of criminal responsibility across all states and jurisdictions in Australia. And so we will speak with her about Aboriginal children who are being locked up, and possibly we will also speak about deaths in custody, depending on how much time we have, although the topic is definitely interrelated to detention. So first up, we'll speak with Jenny. Just a little bit of background. After being sentenced in the Hobart Magistrates Court, Collette was taken directly to Hobart's Risdon prison, where she spent her first couple of nights behind bars. And Collette's been jailed for her ongoing peaceful protests, drawing attention to the ongoing destruction of habitat for threatened species like the swift parrot, masked owl and Tasmanian devil. And listeners may recall that on the Doin Time show we did speak quite a lot about what's happening with anti-protest laws and what the government is not doing to advance peaceful protest in Australia. So in a moment, after an announcement, we'll be speaking with Jenny Webber.
Did you know that Ripponlea Estate is recognised as a leading biodiversity hotspot within the city of Glen Eira? It is a haven for birds and other wildlife. Ripponlea Estate is now running bird spotting tours, providing an opportunity for the community to explore the beautiful 14 acres of gardens with a volunteer guide searching out the diverse family of birds that call Ripponlea home. Please visit ripponleaestate.com.au to view tour times and to book your tour. The National Trust of Australia is a 3CR supporter.
And in case people have just tuned in, this is the Doin Time show, and we're speaking now with Jenny Webber, Bob Brown Foundation. Hello, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me today.
It's lovely to have you, Jenny. Now, I'm wondering if you could talk about what's happened with Dr Collette, and I believe that she's one of Bob Brown Foundation's most passionate and dedicated activists.
That's right. The Bob Brown Foundation's been around for 10 years, and Collette has been with us all the way. Collette is a scientist. She's formerly been employed by the government to look after Tasmanian devils, and she's actually a fantastic wildlife veterinarian. And she was sentenced last Friday to 3 months prison. And as you introduced, she went straight into the women's prison that afternoon last Friday. She was sentenced 3 months for protest, and on top of that 3 months, she's also been given another 6 months suspended sentence based on a 2-year good behaviour bond. And so Collette is someone who has seen the terrible damage that's going on out in our forests and in Takina, and she's just someone who has taken action. She really has stood up and participated in civil disobedience over and over again. But she's a classic intelligent woman who's putting her hand up to the government and saying, hello, there's these problems, fix them. And instead of the government fixing them, you know, they send in the police to arrest the peaceful forest defenders.
So this is not unusual anymore, is it? It's no longer surprising. So people are actually being jailed now for peacefully protesting?
Yeah, in New South Wales, unfortunately, it is a bit more apparent. It is new for Australia, really. I mean, Tasmania has, people went to jail during the Franklin case, but that was actually the Franklin River time was because they wouldn't sign their bail notices. Then there were 2 men who were sentenced to prison on breaking suspended sentences about 12 years ago in Tasmania over the pulp mill and logging of native forest here. Nish and Ali were their names. But Colette's actually the first woman in Tasmania to be sentenced as an environmental defender to prison. So it's actually quite ridiculous in 2023 when we're facing our hottest days on record across the globe, and we've got all these climate catastrophes that are happening, especially here in Australia with those terrible bushfires, that we are jailing scientists who have been protesting. So, though, yes, in New South Wales we have seen appalling anti-protest laws introduced and being rolled out and seeing people like Violet Coco, who spent 2 weeks or more in prison herself in New South Wales, and others.
It's demoralising for people to go to prison for this. I mean, there was nothing violent here. What do they get it for?
This is exactly the problem. It's classic too in our nation that we live in, where it's all Aboriginal land that was never ceded. That the companies are being given the right to destroy these public lands of their forests, or mining companies being able to do mining. Where Collette was charged with trespass. So she's not only charged with trespass for walking on public land, but, unceded Aboriginal land, and then sent to prison. She was also charged with offences related to, being attached with a steel pipe to a machine, which is destroying that area. So they are absolutely 100% non-violent acts. Collette is one of our best non-violent trainers. She carries out non-violent direct action workshops here in our office and out in the field, and she's one of the best. She's such a great person at training hundreds of people into non-violent direct action. It's quite horrendous, really. And have you spoken to her? How is she? Yes, I just spoke to her just half an hour ago. She rang. She's doing fine. She actually she was preparing herself for quite a while that she would be going to prison, because she had a 3-month suspended sentence, and this was why it was activated. She had a 3-month suspended sentence, and she had bail conditions where she wasn't allowed 30 kilometres from her house. So since July last year, she hasn't been able to go further than 30 kilometres beyond her house. She had a period of time with her bail conditions where police would turn up for home visits unannounced at any time, and often that was at midnight or at 11 p.m. And so since July last year, she's actually been, in draconian sort of, treatment of non-violent protesters. So she called earlier today. She said she's had 75 letters, so they're really uplifting for her, and people talking about how they're getting into action, because of her. I visited with her last week, and she had visitors today. I mean, your listeners would know better than anyone about how harsh it is that you can only have one half an hour visit a week. There's tough sanctions on people who are already, being punished for their crimes, but then to have disconnection from society like that is rough. But you know what, Colette's doing okay. She actually, as I said, prepared herself for this, and she's holding up.
This is really appalling. It's appalling. This is stuff that's not covered in the mainstream media. And, that could have been me. Like, I was heavily involved in the East Gippsland blockades some years ago now. And I locked onto a bulldozer at one stage, and I wasn't even arrested.
Exactly. I mean, the thing is that you have watched, like Collette has, successive governments just ignore scientists' warnings.
Yes.
Ignore the warnings from all over the world that, we need to protect forests. And classically, they ignore the fact that they went through the same primary school teaching. And you ask any primary school person now about why do we need trees? We need trees to breathe, and we need trees for, clean water. And these are all things that we take for granted, especially in Australia, in the actual places that are surrounded by incredible forests, where they just think it's okay to keep destroying them. So one of the most recent shocking experiences for Collette was, because she's a wildlife expert, a lot of the sort of terrible images that people find, wildlife that look like they're sick in the forest or they've been impacted by the logging. And the most recent one was a Tasmanian devil that had been completely incinerated by the helicopter burns that they do after the logging. So they drop their napalm-like substance. And she received those photos, and she thought that was actually the sort of thing that you release to the media and there will be change. If anyone, believes in what can trigger change, it should be that. And it didn't. And, she was just beside herself. But, I think the thing about Collette is that she's seen so much destruction and written all the letters. She's one of the best Tasmanian letter writers to the newspaper. She really has lobbied and worked really hard to talk to people for the last 15 years. And it is appalling that here she is sitting in a prison when she's an extraordinary scientist that could be helping with the change that needs to happen to protect nature.
There are a couple of things I'm thinking about as you're speaking, and one of them is that, generally speaking, there's quite a lot of draconian things that the police are getting away with. For example, those conditions that you were talking about, they're horrendous to do with the bail.
Yeah, with the things that we're finding, New South Wales activist friends are having probably the hardest time right now, and Collette definitely did as well. The thing is that every single time these draconian bail conditions are given is a time when there could be change.
Yes.
It is disappointing that, it's still a criminal offence to attempt to protect the environment we have left.
Yeah.
I can't even. And it's also what's really important is for us activist community not to just accept it. Not to become blasé about the fact that we don't get listened to by the governments and the governments don't see change. What the main thing Collette is keen on pushing on with is doing it for the forest. So her website is called Doing It for the Forest. She's got a new tattoo that says Doing It for the Forest. She keeps saying that to herself as a mantra to keep her strength up in prison. And last night we posted a message from her that she recorded out of prison, which was asking people to get active for the forest. And when I was speaking to her today, I said, there were so many people on the comments saying, I will go to this rally, Collette, for you. I will go and take action on this for you. So she's inspiring people, and that's what's really important, is to make sure that she's not left and forgotten in there in prison.
Thank you. That's fantastic. What's her prison address in case people wish to write? Does she need more letters?
Yes, she absolutely loves the letters, and she's writing back to people, so she'd love people to put their return address on it. She's actually got a great little website as well if people wanted to share it. But her address is Collette Harsden, Harmsen, and you have to put her number on, which is OTS number 116318, and she's at PO Box 24, Lindisfarne, Tasmania. Now, doingitfortheforest.com is her website, and on the website it has a great little post that says "Write to me at the women's prison" that gives you the address and the things that you can and can't send. I mean, we are just flummoxed about how people in Tasmania in the prisons can't receive books. You think a simple thing that someone can do whilst in prison is to read a book, and I think in Victoria it's different. You might be able to tell me, but people have been surprised that they've not just been able to send her a book or...
Disgusting.
But she actually is really finding that writing letters to people and receiving letters from people is keeping her spirits up.
We'll have to see about these books because I think you can get them from the publisher or from Amazon.
Right, and so we were told here in Tasmania at the prison last week that you can donate books to the State Library. You can donate them directly to the Risdon Women's Prison Library, and so she does have a library in there that she can access. And so that's something that we have been spreading the word to people is to donate books to your local library and make sure you tell them that I would like it to go to the local prison, because it just means that people can access something to read.
Absolutely. Jenny, thank you so much for coming onto the program. I'd love to actually speak with you regularly, maybe monthly, and while Dr Collette is in prison, just to get an update. Is that okay?
That'd be so good, and she would love to speak to you when she's out too. So
I would love to.
The 14th of October is a big day for her, and she would love to speak to you afterwards. So, let's keep in touch. We're really, really thankful for people to be able to hear about Dr Collette Harsden and her great efforts that she is doing right now, which is being a political prisoner in Tasmania's women's prison. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much. Thank you very much. Take care.
See you. Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.
3CR.
Get to the Melbourne Documentary Film Festival, screening the very best documentaries from South by Southwest, Sundance, Tribeca, as well as the best local Melbourne and Australian documentaries. Online from the 1st to the 31st of July and at Cinema Nova from the 21st to the 30th of July. For more information, head to mdff.org.au and cinemanova.com.au. The Melbourne Documentary Film Festival is a 3CR supporter.
And you're back with the Doin Time show, 3CR Community Radio, and it's approximately 4:18. We're going to be speaking now with Cheryl Axleby, who has been on our show many times now. She's from Change the Record. And we will be speaking with her about raising the age of criminal responsibility and having a look at quite a few things in regards to why are governments dragging their feet, and this is indeed a violation of human rights. Hello, Cheryl. Welcome to the program.
G'day there.
Yeah, you've been here a couple of times now, haven't you, about the same issue?
Same issue, and still hanging in there, and still advocating strongly.
Absolutely. Can you just tell listeners what land you're from?
Yeah, I'm from, my country's at Narungga Mob from South Australia on the York Peninsula, and I'm talking to you all from Gunner Country in Adelaide.
Thank you so much. So, we are in a national campaign to raise the age of criminal responsibility across all states and jurisdictions in Australia. Mm-hmm. And what's happening between states and the federal government now when no one wants to take responsibility for protecting Australia's children?
Yes, well, what we're seeing at the moment, and I suppose let's put it in context that Australia has one of the lowest ages of criminal responsibility in the world, and the United Nations has repeatedly criticised us for that. And What we're seeing across the country is the Northern Territory government legislation, or have committed, raising the age to 12, not 14. And we're expecting to see that come into fruition, I think it's on the 1st of August. The Tasmanian government has raised the age of detention to 14, but not criminal responsibility, which means that children aged 10 can still be arrested, held in handcuffs and locked up in police cells. Victoria government has backtracked on its commitment to raise the age to 14, now only committing to 12, and we've seen that similarly also with the ACT, who first demonstrated leadership and were quite keen to raise the age to 14, and who have now decided that they'll raise it to 12 with a commitment to raise it to 14, I think, in about 2025, but they're going to have some carve-outs for offences. For 4 offences from memory, and in the context, but in the past 10 years, no child in the ACT has even committed these type of offences that they're wanting to put caveats on. So that's where we're at, and what we've seen is other states and territories. WA, under the previous premier, had said that they were not going to raise the age. There's been some yarn with the new premier that the government will consider that, and we're still yet to hear from the other states and territories who have been silent.
So how much has changed? Not much.
Not much, really. There has been, I think we're coming up to probably 3.5 years now since all the Attorney Generals from every state and territory were meeting to talk about this issue. I think it's really sad that this is a political issue more than a medical issue. And we keep saying, for a very long time that there is medical evidence, and we've had medical experts talk up about this over the years, that a child under the age of 14 does not have the mental capacity to regulate their emotions and weigh up, the consequences of their behaviour. And behaviour of children is just that, it's behaviour. And instead, our governments are fixed on criminalising kids instead of, taking away from their families, communities, instead of actually looking at how there could be a more humane and therapeutic response to our younger, children.
So this does affect Aboriginal children because there is indeed over-incarceration of Aboriginal children, isn't there?
That's right. Our kids, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander kids, hence, why Change Record has actually, taken up the cause, is because many of our Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander children make up probably around about 60%, 60 to 70% at any time, of kids in this age group that are, locked up. So, that's quite appalling statistics when we look at this. And also, the evidence also is, the, comparable rates with non-Aboriginal children, where our kids are more than likely to be arrested and locked up in comparison to the non-Aboriginal young followers of this country. So it still demonstrates that there are some real, systemic issues that need to be addressed, as well as the issue about, treating children with a therapeutic response, because we know that the evidence also demonstrates really clearly, particularly for our mob, of the intergenerational incarceration, and it starts with our babies going into the prison system.
And yet, there's been some research that has been put forward about closing the gap and looking at digital technology. How is that going to help Aboriginal children that are locked up and, looking at... It's I don't know, it beggars belief.
Well, it does beg belief, because, if we look at, I'll just give you some sort of overview about our kids on lock-up. And how governments are failing to give this human face to the children behind bars because they don't want to address the real issues these kids are facing, and how, the system is failing. So 9 in 10 have a neurodevelopmental impairment. 3 in 5 are our Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander children. 2 in 3 have been a victim or witness to family violence. 2 in 3 have a mental illness. And 2 in 3 come from very disadvantaged homes and neighbourhoods. So, this is where the criminalisation of children is, to me, really appalling, that we continue to go down that same colonial sort of penalised approach for when young children, in particular, need guidance, love, support, and, opportunities to be able to thrive, which is through these therapeutic responses.
It's true. And also, what about thinking about who the parents are? That when we look at the facts, the parents are more likely to be single, raising other children and living on welfare payments.
Yeah.
Are these parents being criminalised at all?
Well,
because the children don't comply with intensive therapy orders?
Yeah, well, there is, we're deeply concerned by introduction of the possibility of criminal charges for families whose children don't comply with those intensive therapy orders. So, here again we have another, compliance-based system that penalises rather than actually having a therapeutic, supportive response that actually works with families and also the parents. And, we also need to think about the impact of, many of parents of these children have probably been part of the system themselves, which has failed them as well. And, we keep seeing this time and time again through the intergenerational incarceration that we see with our families, and particularly, our young fellas at the moment. So to me, it just beggars beyond belief that we keep going back to this criminalised system when we know that our mob have been very much traumatised since colonisation in and through, repeated acts of government that have still not addressed those causal factors or the current issues within, the system itself. And, of course, racialised policing, the likelihood of our mob being, more than likely being arrested than reported, all these things still are happening today, 30 years after the Royal Commission into Aboriginal Deaths in Custody, which acknowledged and identified all these issues more than many years ago. And here we are, still talking about them 30 years later.
Because we've had at least 540 Aboriginal people who have died in custody since the 1991 Royal Commission, isn't it, into Aboriginal Deaths in Custody?
Yeah. And Aboriginal deaths in custody have doubled in the past year alone, so from 4 to 8. And our mob, are still dying in police cells and prisons for two reasons, which I talked about was the discriminatory policies, which sees us arrested, in comparison. And the other one is the, discriminatory treatment that we're subjected to by police and correctional authorities. And a lot of our mob keep coming back into the system for what we say, not creating new offences, but for breaching some of those, whether, some of the, and they're minor breaches a lot of the times, not serious breaches, when they're actually released from custody. Or they might be released, in the context of bail. So, this system just keeps bringing our mob back into the system. And this is why we keep saying about why raising the age is important. Because, if we want to seriously, and if any government is seriously, committed to closing the gap, then, this is a really good opportunity to break that intergenerational incarceration cycle that our mob have experienced by starting with our youngest generation and looking at what could be done differently, investing back in our communities, having our own communities, delivering programs for our kids, because we know that when we deliver our own programs, they are more targeted and they meet the needs of our mob. This is all in line with closing the gap, and yet we're still yet to see any commitment.
And I know, Cheryl, I have invited you quite a few times on the show, and I know it really sounds repetitive, but it's so important to keep this topic alive, don't you think?
Absolutely. And, we at Change the Record are constantly doing that. And, we would welcome any of the listeners, to please get onto our webpage, Change the Record, and, show your support because we can't let governments off the hook on this very important issue. And this is not just for our kids, but it's for all young fellas between the ages of 10 to 14 years of age. And if we can actually, think about how we as parents, when our own children need love and guidance and direction, we don't actually throw our kids in the criminalised system. We actually are the parent and we teach them right from wrong. And that's what we should be doing in society for these young babies.
Absolutely. There is one more thing that I really wanted to talk about. Cheryl, do you have a bit more time?
Yeah.
We were talking just before about deaths in custody, and I wanted to really draw listeners' attention to Tanya Day. Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about her?
Well, I don't really like talking on behalf of Tanya. But,
no, that's okay.
Yeah.
I'll summarise it.
Yeah, you do that.
So she was a Yorta grandmother who was arrested and died in police custody. Yeah. Let's speak generally about deaths in custody.
Yeah, let's do that.
And maybe, so she was on deaths in custody for public drunkenness after being found asleep on a train. But let's talk generally about Aboriginal women.
Yeah.
Instead of that, and then that way you won't be compromised.
Yeah, I don't want to upset family, and I think the family have been really deadly in what they've been able to achieve.
Absolutely.
In changing the laws in Victoria, and that's a testament to people power and how family can really make a difference. And I think this is what we've got to do more and more right across Australia, is that we've got to say that deaths in custody are not acceptable. Locking up our children is not acceptable. Taking away our children from families, which we still see at high numbers, being removed from families is not acceptable. What we need is investment in our communities. And when we look at some of the Aboriginal deaths in custody, particularly for women, when we see them getting arrested for very minor offences and chucked into a police cell, it tells us there is something really wrong in this country that we need to address within the criminal justice system. And it can't be just 3 words anymore, because, how many more deaths is it going to take? If it was 540, and I'm putting this out there respectfully, non-Aboriginal fellows that died in custody, we've seen some media of late of particularly that, the lovely elderly woman, who passed away, through being tasered, We've seen a lot more noise about that than we actually have seen in regards to the 540 Aboriginal deaths in custody. And, we've got to start looking at these issues and treating them with the respect and the family's respect that they deserve to get some justice for their loved ones.
Cheryl, that's exactly what I wanted to hear, because that's what I wanted to really draw attention to. And I'm so glad that you were able to say that on air. Do you see what I mean? That's what I was looking for.
Yeah, and I have all the respect in the world, for the elderly woman's family, because, they've experienced the same injustices that many of our families have for many, many years and decades. And it shouldn't be happening in Australia today. And when we look at the way that police react in such situations and where people are dying as a result of being apprehended, then there's got to be accountability and we need to have independence where police are no longer protected within their own systems. And now we're finally seeing another police officer being charged, as we did see with the case in the Northern Territory. But are we going to see any outcome or police being held accountable for the behaviours that they do? And to date, we haven't seen that yet with many of our black families at all.
Auntie, thank you so much. I mean, it's just, I know it's hard, but and I hope I'm not asking, too many confronting questions, but it's got to be talked about, doesn't it?
It does need to be talked about, and we try and tackle this, when I think about I grew up in the 70s, 80s movement when I saw a lot of our mob, talking about this issue and being angry and walking the streets and we're still trying to look at how best we can try and get our voices still heard on these very important issues. And, as communities, we cannot let fellas off the hook, and we've got to keep, flying the flag and keep the fire in the belly until we get, ultimate justice for our mob. And, to all the families out there that have lost loved ones, again, thinking of you all, every time that we talk about these issues, I'm sure that it does, bring up some points, trigger points for their mob. But just know that there are fellas out there continue to, to challenge the system, and we need more of our mob to do that.
We do. So, finally, despite a report from ACT Parliament Standing Committee on Justice and Community Safety, it still failed to recommend necessary changes to the legislation to raise the age.
Yep, it was very disappointing, and CTR did actually give a submission at that inquiry in Canberra. It's just so disappointing that when, at the beginning, ACT in particular were really keen to commit to raising the age to 14, and having some of these caveats where, children can be forced to be given treatment rather than, again, about having that therapeutic response, because end of the day, the lack of investment in early intervention prevention programs is the issue. And this is why I think it's taken so long for governments to actually look at raising the age, is because they know that it takes a greater investment at the early end, early intervention prevention. And, that means that they have to give money from somewhere else to do that. And I'm not sure whether they're brave enough to do that, but also whether they're brave to do that politically at the moment. Because, we're talking about changing the way that we deal with young fellas in the system. And we've got no political bravery, I call it, to actually make that big step.
Exactly. I mean, the Human Rights Law Centre was, they were one of the organisations, and lots of Aboriginal organisations too, gave so much evidence on the significant harm and trauma that children in prisons are being subjected to, and still there's been no change.
Well, we're still knowing that some of our kids who are locked up are being locked in their cells for up to 23 hours a day, and we know that that's in breach of the United Nations and the Convention of the Rights of the Children. But again, we're not seeing any accountability, in regards to that front. Now, for us, if we were home locking our kids up 23 hours a day in their room, we would be up before the Child Protection Agency and police as parents were treating our children like that. And yet, government entities seem to be able to get away with it. And that's not good enough.
It's certainly not good enough at all. Cheryl, thank you so much for coming onto the program. It's always great to have you.
Thank you, and always happy to have you on.
Good on you. Thanks a lot.
Okay, see you then. Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Hi, this is Marisa from the Doin Time Show, and you're listening to a summer repeat of Doin Time.
Every form of discrimination that exists in our community is magnified and utilised by prisons to cause greater division and disarm solidarity.
We've got to really put a lens of perspective on this and know that there are children being incarcerated as young as 10 years old.
Police and prisons, they're doing exactly what this colony wants them to.
Who do we defend? And who else? Prisons! Pull them down! Yay!
3CR, stay tuned, stay radical.
Is this what we deserve? Is this what we deserve? Is this what we deserve? All I'm asking, Lord, is this what we deserve? We've been here since time began. Our ancestors' footprints are buried in the sand. We are but caretakers of this ancient land, but you still don't understand. Is this what we deserve? Is this what we deserve? Is this what we deserve? Can you tell me now? Is this what we deserve? Your laws are so unjustified. Our basic human rights have been denied. Come up with excuses like your hands are tied, but you go on committing genocide. Is this what we deserve? Is Is this what we deserve? Is this what we deserve? Can you tell me now? Is this what we deserve? Just keep on trying. And our poor eyes, they just keep on crying. And sadly our people, they just keep on dying. While you just keep on lying. Is this what we deserve? Is this what we deserve? Is this what we deserve? Can you tell me now? Is this what we deserve? Keep on crying. Is this what we deserve? Now elders keep on dying. Is this what we deserve? Can you tell me, Lord, is this what we deserve? Can you tell me now, is this what we deserve?
And this is 3CR Community Radio Doin Time show, and it's approximately 4:42, and this is Marisa taking you through until 5 o'clock. We're nearing the end of our show, but not quite, and I just wanted to read out a media release, and I'm hoping to interview Ian Rintel in the next couple of weeks from the Refugee Action Coalition, and they've been quite busy holding some rallies, and the media release is entitled Refugee Action Coalition Media Release, 10 years too bloody long. Rallies call for an end to offshore detention. And by the way, that was a song by Kutcha Edwards, and it's a very beautiful song. So I'll start forward with this release. 10 years too bloody long. Refugee rallies were held in Brisbane, Canberra and Sydney on Sunday the 23rd of July to demand permanent visas for all offshore refugees and the victims of fast-track processing and an end to offshore detention. Labor has a particular responsibility to end offshore detention and bring those still held offshore to Australia, said Ian Rintel from the Refugee Action Coalition. It was a Labor government in 2013 that implemented the PNG deal, and it is the current Albanese Labor government that is keeping 75 refugees in PNG. Labor is on notice. We will keep fighting to get all the refugees from PNG evacuated from PNG and brought to Australia. Shannon Potter, a delegate to Labor's August National Conference and a speaker at the Sydney rally, said, Australia's treatment of refugees is a national shame shared by both major parties. I am one of thousands of rank-and-file Labor members who will continue to demand that the Labor government adopt a humane refugee policy. As a delegate to the ALP National Conference, I will fight to end the policy of offshore detention for good. The refugees in PNG must be brought here, and we must ensure this tragedy is never repeated by permanently closing the detention centre on Nauru. Labor's claim that they are not responsible for the refugees in PNG has been blown out of the water after the revelation that they are still using a secret deal negotiated by Scott Morrison to fund the refugees they dumped there 10 years ago. Around 1,100 refugees brought from PNG and Nauru are in the Australian community on bridging visas with no secure future. They need permanent visas. 12,000 asylum seekers denied refugee status under Morrison's fast-track process also need permanent visas. Albanese claims that Labor can be tough on border protection without being weak on humanity. But after a year in office, Labor is showing it really is weak on humanity. Sydney rally, Labor's refugee shame, 10 years too bloody long, and that happened at 1 p.m. Sunday the 23rd of July, Town Hall. Speakers included Ramsey, former Manus refugee, Cajun Palan, Tamil refugee on bridging visa, Shannon Potter, ALP National Conference delegate, Dave Townsend, Independent Education Union, New South Wales ACT, Tilly, Refugee Action Coalition. So I wanted to actually read out that media release just to show and shine a spotlight on the fact that refugees and asylum seekers are still being treated inhumanely and that a lot more work needs to be done to bring them home to Australia. I think we'll just have two more announcements and then I'll come back and thank our guests and say goodbye.
Tickets are now on sale for the 2024 Marxism Conference, happening over the Easter weekend. The Marxism Conference is one of the biggest gatherings of revolutionaries, radicals and activists from around Australia and across the world. 3 days of discussions, interviews and debates on key questions and themes for socialists, covering radical working class history, Marxist fundamentals, left debates and global struggles happening today. With our world entering a new era of accelerated climate crisis, economic chaos and rising imperialist tensions, it's now more important than ever for socialists and anti-capitalists to get together to discuss and debate ideas for a world in crisis. Lock in your spot to Australia's biggest socialist conference and grab your tickets now at marxismconference.org.
A 3CR supporter.
What's taking place in Palestine is horrendous. The people of Gaza, who have survived ethnic cleansing, 3 wars and a 16-year siege, are now facing the biggest attacks ever mounted against them.
This will only stop if governments like ours demand that it stop. Here are some ways that you can keep yourself informed and involved.
Listen in to Palestine Remembered every Saturday morning at 9:30am or listen to the podcast.
Join the APAN mailing list at apan.org.au for updates, news about actions you can get involved in and where you can donate to provide humanitarian assistance.
Listen to other news and current affairs programs on 3CR that also cover Palestine.
The oppression of the Palestinian people has been going on for 75 years. It has to stop. You can be part of making that happen by staying informed and active.
APAN is a proud supporter of 3CR.
And you're back with the Doin Time show. It's approximately 3:48, and I've just got another piece of really good news before we actually finish. Not that there's much good news on this show, but I think it was last week that the federal court quashed the declaration of a proposed nuclear waste dump site near Kimba in SA. And this is a huge win for the Bunjala traditional owners and who were unanimous in their opposition to the proposed nuclear dump, as well as for the farmers and communities around Kimba. It's really wonderful that was actually able to happen. And I mentioned this little tidbit because really, at the end of the day, we're going to be seeing more and more people that are peacefully protesting going to prison. We're going to be seeing more and more arrests. We will see more and more civil liberties being eroded. And I think that we need to stay tuned and stay radical, not only to 3CR, but also to rising up and making sure that our rights are not being violated. So I wanted to say thank you to both of our guests today. And I only had 2 guests today because I really wanted to draw attention to all the issues. And we in particular had an extended interview with Auntie Cheryl Axleby from Change the Record. And she spoke about deaths in custody and also the national campaign to raise the age, or not raise the age actually, of criminal responsibility for children. And all children are affected in prison by this, but in particular Aboriginal children, because they are over-incarcerated far more than non-Aboriginal children. And I also wanted to thank Jenny Webber from the Bob Brown Foundation, who has existed for many years now. And please do write to Dr Collette, who is in prison, and jump on the website, Google the Bob Brown Foundation, and I'm hoping that things can happen there for her and for all people in prison. So I'm going to be finishing up the show a little bit early today, and I'll certainly be making up for that in the coming weeks. There's a lot of coverage coming up. So stay tuned every Monday for the Doin Time show, and it's goodbye from Marisa, and we'll be going out now with our theme song, Black Fella, White Fella by the Rumpy Band, and I'm sure you'll be hearing other music after that before Climate Action comes on. Thanks a lot. Take care of each other. Bye.
3CR.
Hi, this is Marisa, and you've been listening to a summer special of the Doin Time show. We'll be back with new shows on Monday, the 22nd of January. I hope you enjoyed today's program. See you later.
Stay tuned to 3CR Community Radio.
As long as you are true fella, as long as you are real fella. All the people of different races with different lives in different places. It doesn't matter what your name is. We got to have lots of changes. We need more brothers if we're to make it. We need more sisters if we're to save it. Are you the one who's gonna stand up and be counted? Are you the one who's gonna Are you the one who's always ready with a helping hand? Are you the one who